Welcome to GNCC's Lunch and Learn, focused on strategies for better prospecting and building new relationships. This is an interactive hour and an opportunity to learn how to best manage our time, tracking our successes, and building a rapport by creating value early on with our customers. My name is Mishka Balzan, and I'm glad that you chose to be with us for the next hour. An informative session like this one is only possible because of partnerships, and one of those partners is the YMCA Employment and Immigrant Services of Niagara. Whether you're looking for an entry-level work or for a more senior role, finding a job isn't always easy, and that's why they offer employment programs to support employees through this process. And if you're an employer, they offer extensive employment service programs at the same time. So our thanks go to the YMCA Employment and Immigrant Services of Niagara for making this lunch and learn possible. And leading today's workshop is Nathan Beach. He's the Business Development Manager at Blvd, a promotional and marketing agency actually located right here in St. Catharines. Nathan is responsible for driving sales growth for the organization, whether it's networking and identifying new business opportunities or overseeing growth projects. Nathan is no stranger to excellence and exceeding expectations. He received his diploma in business, sales and marketing from Niagara College, along with the CCAA National Scholar Award for Excellence in Athletics and Academics. And after school, Nathan packed his bags and flew off to the land down under. After 5 years of working in the advertising and sales world in Sydney, Australia, he decided that it was time to boomerang back to Niagara to start his family. And we're glad that he made that decision. He is now married with 2 daughters and lighting up the business world at Blvd. Nathan, thank you so very much for being with us today. And to you, all of our attendees, and just a little bit about the format today. The next 55 minutes are going to be highly interactive. We're going to start out with a presentation, which probably will last for maybe around like 30 minutes, half the time, and then it's followed up by a Q&A session. So we ask you to please utilize the chat function that you see at the bottom of your screen to actually share any comments and questions with us, or raise the hand function, which is another function, a key at the bottom of your screen, to actually ask the live question, and we will unmute you to do so. If you are interested in a live transcript, please stay in the, please look at the bottom of your screen again, and you can activate that at the same time. So on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Nathan. Nathan, over to you.
Thanks so much, Misha. Thanks so much for the kind words and that awesome introduction. I'm just gonna hold that up there for you. It looks like we're all good. Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. Everyone attending and watching this this event at a later date. Thank you for your time. And yeah, I really appreciate it. Shout out to the Greater Niagara Chamber of Commerce for allowing me to have an hour of your time and talk about what I do every day. Hopefully, I can instill a few tidbits of information that you can take with you moving forward. Also, big thanks to the YMCA, of course, for their support and ongoing support for these types of events. So, as Misha said, my name is Nathan Beach. I'm the Business Development Manager here at Blvd. We're a branded apparel and merch supplier based right here in St. Catharines. My role specifically within sales is going out and finding new clients, new opportunities, new prospects. We have a fairly large group of clients that we work with on the day-to-day. My job is simply adding to that group and looking for companies that kind of appreciate the work that we do in finding those good fits across the country. So I thought, what better thing to talk about in terms of sales is how to do that. How to turn a simple name in a directory into a client. So I'm going to shine a bit of a light on what I do on the day-to-day, and as I said, hopefully take down any questions. I'd love to field some questions at the end, and I hope you enjoy. So let's get back on course here. So what am I going to be talking about today is 3 strategies that I use every single day when it comes to creating new business opportunities, setting the foundations for new business relationships. I think that there is a lot to be said for structure. So I'm going to be talking about how to best go about your day and utilizing those 8 or 9 hours that you have to maximize your efficiency and the return on the time that you're putting in. I'm going to be talking about tracking your activities throughout the day. So not only setting up your day the right way, but how to really analyze that data and use it in the best way possible moving forward when it comes to looking at sales targets and when it comes to looking at what you're doing in a day. Third, I'm going to be talking about building a rapport. This is probably like the most important one. That's probably why I saved it for last. This is talking about your very first interaction with prospects when you're at the very sort of infancy stages of that business relationship. What to do, what not to do, I'm really keen to talk to you about that as well. So, a little bit about me. I know Mishka alluded to a lot of this. Born and raised in Niagara. I grew up in Ridgeway. I still live down there to this day. Went to Niagara College, graduated in 2010 with, I took the business sales and marketing course there. Fantastic course, excellent school. I took off in 2012 for Sydney, Australia with my then girlfriend. I spent 5 years there working in sales as a kind of a sales, a few different positions, but I sold advertising and sponsorships for a media company. Came back to Canada in 2018 and then sort of split my time between London and Toronto doing that same thing before finally coming back to Niagara and putting down some roots here. And that's of course when I started with Blvd, and it's been fantastic ever since. Outside of work, I'm surrounded by 3 beautiful, lovely ladies. My wife Carissa and my 2 daughters, Everly, who's 3, and Sullivan, who's just turned 6 months. If I do find time to, have a few minutes, sit down on the couch, I'm all about the sports. Massive sports fan. I try and catch every game that I can, and of course playing them too. Basketball, volleyball, soccer. I played volleyball at Niagara College. If I can get some pickup hockey in, all the better. So a little bit about me. I want to kind of get a feel for some of the attendees today. Of course, now I work in a B2B sales environment, but what I'm going to be talking about is very much relatable and practical for a B2B or a B2C sales environment. So Savannah, if we could pull up that poll, just if we could, just to be able to kind of put your hand up, or I'm not too sure how it works, but if we could get a feel for, if you could say you're in a B2B or B2C role, that'd be fantastic. I'm not sure if we're able to do, oh, there we go. I see it up. We'll give it a second. If not, no worries. Okay. Well, poll is closed. Okay, all good, no worries. I wanted to, oh, there we go. 58 B2C, 50. Okay, so pretty split. That's great. I think at the end of the day, like, any sales professional will attest to, sales are sales. I think there's a ton you can take away from this, whether you are in a B2C or B2B sales environment. The framework, the fundamentals are the same. So thanks everyone for providing a bit of insight there and participating in that poll. So a bit of a disclaimer before I go forward. A lot of what I'm talking about today is specifically for new business development. I know that we probably all have clients who we've worked with for a year, 2 years, 10, 20 years, in some instances. You take a different approach when it comes to managing those types of clients and accounts. At that point, it really is about providing an upward level of service and maintaining that service, not to sort of get a bit complacent. What I'm talking about today is not that. This is about starting a business relationship off on the right foot. So especially when it comes to talking about building rapport early on, it may not jive exactly with the approach that you would take with a long-term client of yours. This is more for that prospect, that person who, might be a good fit for your company, but there's literally nothing there. It's an empty lot, and you've got to, build a foundation and a house on it. So just a bit of a disclaimer moving forward as we, talk about some of these strategies. First thing I want to talk about is structuring your day. I think, like myself included, a lot of salespeople, we're kind of like squirrels chasing an acorn sometimes, where we want to do the task or the activity that leads to that sale being closed immediately. So, you get that email coming in saying, yeah, we're going to go ahead with the order, or yeah, let's get started this day. It's what fuels us. It's what drives us, closing those sales, see those numbers going up on the board, or, ringing that sales bell if you have it. But sometimes that excitement and that adrenaline that can come from that, it can be a detriment to some of those other activities that, although aren't quite as exciting and as fun, are just as important when it comes to winning a sale and turning a prospect into a client. So by structuring your day, you're going to find that you're going to allocate certain amounts of time to every type of activity that is required, converting that prospect to a suspect. And you're just going to get a lot more out of your day. There's been times in the past where you're driving home, and for myself, I'm like, man, I'm so busy today. But it's like, what did I do? I didn't feel like I got anything done because I was so scattered. I didn't have any structure. So I've really put a lot of dedication and work into this. And yeah, I'll talk a little bit about it now. So the big thing is time blocking for me. There we go. So break your day into chunks and into group and group them into like-minded tasks. So what do I mean by that? You don't want to start your day making a few calls, do a few emails. Maybe you have to pop into somebody, say, drop something off, and then come back. And it just makes for a really scattered day. By time blocking, you're basically doing the exact opposite of multitasking, which, you kind of go back through the ages, and there's a million articles you can read on why it's good or why it's bad. You get more done. I am definitely in the camp of it doesn't work. Time block your day. The next slide, I'm going to get into a bit of an example of what my day looks like. But to kind of preface it's about looking at your top 3 or 4 or 5 different things that you do in a day and group them together. You'll find you're far more efficient, you're getting more done, and you're doing them better because you're doing them as part of a chain. Whether you have to send emails or, write out postcards that you're sending out, you kind of get into that groove. So your overall quality of output's going to be better, and you're getting it done in a much more efficient way. One key thing to remember here is turn off notifications when you are time blocking. That means turning off email, turning off Slack or any other type of internal communication. You put your phone away. If you're working in the office and you have a desk phone, you don't need your cell phone out. Put it away. It can only lead to distractions and taking you away from the tasks that you've set out to do. Now, of course, if you're on your cell phone working from home, turn off notifications, anything that will sort of, break up your rhythm that you have going. So here's kind of a daily routine. And again, this is just mine. This is kind of giving you some insight into how I plan my day. Now, of course, some days you're on the road for meetings. You've got to go to a trade show or a convention. Not every day can be like this, but this is sort of how I figured out my day runs best, by utilizing time blocking and grouping those like-minded tasks. Again, preface it with saying, this works for me, try it out. If it doesn't work for you, switch things around, try and, play around with it. Everybody's different. Everyone's unique in how they operate in the day. But for me, first things first is I'm on the phones at 9 o'clock. I find I get on that first phone call. It's like my second cup of coffee in the morning. It energizes me. It gets me into a good rhythm for the day. Now, to say that I don't turn off email and everything at 9 and go, okay, who am I going to call? There's a lot of work that goes into having 2.5 hours of calls to make. You've got to make sure that within your CRM, whether you use Salesforce or HubSpot, there's a lot of good, Act is another one. There's a lot of good CRMs out there that will allow you to organize your calls in a way that you're as efficient as possible getting through them. So I'm in usually 8:30 in the morning. I'm making sure that queue of calls is looking good. Maybe answering a few emails that came in the night before, and then I'm getting into phones. If there's people who I'm calling out west, I'll make sure in the system that they're in BC or Alberta. I know not to call them at 9 a.m. as they're not going to be happy getting a call on their cell phone while they're still in bed. So, you have to be smart with this. And it takes a little bit of time to set up, but once it's set up, you'll find you get in that rhythm and routine, and you get those few calls in, and it's that energy as sales professionals that we just thrive off of. And it's the best way that I have found to get my day started. So you get through your calls in the morning, and this is where I've chunked my emails that I'm going to be sending out. So if I have a good phone call with somebody, I am telling them I'm going to send them an intro kit. I'm going to follow up with an email. Now, I don't want to stop that routine and that rhythm of my calls by opening up Outlook and sending an email. It's ruining the flow that I have. So I use a program, little pro tip, it's called Todoist. It's basically just a to-do list app. Simply put, it's really nice. I've got my phone call, spoke to so-and-so, went really well, told them I sent an email, I put that note in my CRM, and then I just put a little note in my to-do saying email, Ted at ABC company. And I know that from 11:30 to 12, all I'm doing is working off that list of emails that I've told myself I need to send out. It's very efficient. You'll find a lot of those email follow-ups are going to be pretty similar. Hey, great speaking with you. Really appreciate your time. Keep an eye out for an intro kit arriving in the mail soon. Look forward to catching up. That, very straightforward, to the point. You can knock out a lot of those in that half hour that you've allocated after your call time. So have a bite to eat, come back. This is where I am doing my project-based activities. So quotes, proposals, samples that need to get out, intro kits that need to get out. This is where I'm doing sort of the nitty-gritty, and those activities, like I said, are kind of more at the beginning of any kind of sales cycle or relationship cycle, but they're nevertheless just as important. And, I give myself an hour. Sometimes things come up, big project lands on your plate. It takes more time than that, but this is where I am focusing my time in doing just this. Emails are turned off. Again, Slack, internal communication turned off. You're only focusing on this. Once you're done, back into calls. This is calls that you didn't get to in the morning. If you call people out west, again, very, very straightforward. And finally, email follow-ups to end the day. So very structured, and of course you're probably saying, well, what happens if this comes up, that comes up? You have to allow for flexibility. You can't be so rigid it's like a bridge. There's always going to be a bit of give there. If they built them completely rigid, they break down, and nobody's using that bridge. So you have to allow for some flexibility, but at the same time, the more kind of disciplined you can be with a schedule like this, the more it'll pay off in the end. So next thing I want to talk about is tracking your activity. This is a bit of a snapshot of an Excel sheet that I use on a weekly basis to track the numbers that I have. Basically, it's my business development output. So, I know there's a lot of information here. I'm not going to go through it all, but, I track how many suspects I'm adding into my system, how many prospects, and then I'm getting into calls. So how many people have I connected with? That is somebody who I've got on the phone and they've said, yes, I'm a decision maker, I'm the buyer, I'm the right person you need to speak to. Voicemails and dial onlys, which of course dial only is just, I tried to get them, they didn't answer, I'll try again tomorrow. Intro kits. This is something that we do a ton of at Brain Boulevard. Obviously, being in the swag game, we send out a lot of intro kits to new prospects that I am entering into the system, who I've connected with, and confirm that they're the right buyer. Meetings booked, obviously very crucial. Most business relationships are only going to get off on the right foot based on a good meeting. I'm going to get into the third portion, of course, of this presentation is going to be how to build that rapport in those meetings as best as possible. And then opportunities generated. I'm keeping track of this, of course. This is, for us, an opportunity is any potential sale. So you've confirmed that somebody has a need, they have an event, a trade show, something coming up, they've got an idea of what they need, a budget, just all the information that you need to confirm there's a potential sale here. That's what we call an opportunity, and then we start the chain from there. So what does it all mean? You can, you know, you can have all this data, you can have that spreadsheet was just of, I think it was 4 or 6 weeks. You can have that over a year, and sure, you can have all this information, all these numbers, but what story is it telling? What can you extract from that to actually say, okay, next year my target is this. What do I have to do to get there? Everything up till now is just anecdotal. There wasn't, you know, I could say, oh yeah, do this, do that, it might work, you know, if depending on sort of how it goes. This is where sort of the tire meets the pavement, and where you can actually tell a story and put tangible evidence to what you're doing. So for example, these are just round numbers. I just kind of made them up for the purpose of this presentation, but it really hits home. So in that sequence there, I had a 6-week span where I was averaging 250 calls per week. 20 of those were connected with a proper buyer. 6 of those people were happy for me to send an intro kit. 3 meetings were booked once I followed up on those intro kits, and 2 opportunities came out of those meetings. That's the flow in terms of how I turn a suspect, somebody I've gotten from, you know, Scott's List or any business directory, or, hey, I just saw a new company on the side of the QEW that I should give them a call and you know, see what they're up to when it comes to brand and merchant apparel. That's sort of the flow. From there, I know that it took 125 dials to generate 1 opportunity. Historically, looking at data with Brand Blvd, we know that we close about 50% of opportunities that created, and they end up in a sale. What that tells us, 250 dials equals 1 sale. Pretty straightforward. Looking back, again, say if historical data suggests that an average sale is $15,000, you know your target on the year is $650,000 as a sales professional. You do the math, that's 44 sales to hit that target. You do the math, extrapolate that over a whole year, you have 11,000 dials to hit your yearly target. And that's the story that it tells. You can break that down. I've kind of got, you know, 212 per week. So those 250 calls I was averaging, I should be well over that target. You can break it down even further into, you know, daily calls required, even, you know, calls required per call time, you know, your block in the morning, your block in the afternoon. I don't like to go that micro. I feel like if, you know, say you have a good 30-40 minute conversation and all of a sudden you've made 1 call where you were expecting to make 30, kind of, it can sort of derail things. Whereas if you just sort of look at it over a week, you can make up for those lost calls at a later point. But it really is evidence that says, you know what, if I want to do 900,000 in sales next year, I know I have to make, looking at this data that we've got clearly in front of us, that is over a large sample size, I need to know I need to make this many calls to get this many meetings, to get this many opportunities, and to close that many sales. It's really, really cool. I could probably geek out on sort of the metrics behind sales and everything all day, but we'll leave it at that for now. But I really, really do recommend keep track of what you're doing, and it will tell a very interesting story. Okay. Third part of this presentation is about building rapport. And as I mentioned, I'm gonna mention a few things in this presentation that you go, well, no, that's crazy. That's never how I run meetings. And just keep in mind, this is for new business development. This is about setting the foundation for a strong business relationship that's built on value, built on trust, and built on respect. You've got to understand, you've done all this work to get this person to agree to give you 30, 40 minutes of their time. As soon as you sit down, you're on the clock, right? And you know the questions that are going through the head of this person who's agreed to meet with you. You know, they're all like, what am I doing? Another salesperson. Like, why did I could be doing this, and this to get done today. Why, like, this person keeps babbling on about how great they and their service and their company are. They clearly don't know anything about what we do. Did they even check out our website? There's all these questions going through their head, and you're already kind of behind the 8 ball from that start. So it is absolutely paramount in terms of building rapport and setting the foundation for that business relationship to avoid some of these things that will only kind of compact those, you know, those leery thoughts that they had. So you have to make it count. In the lead up to that meeting, you've had phone calls, you've exchanged a few emails, you've asked, everything's been centered around a business conversation. So you have to focus the conversation on business. One thing that I see is happening a lot is too much small talk. I feel like as sales professionals, there is this legacy issue that, or not even issue, but this legacy philosophy that says you can't sit down with a prospect for the first time and not get into business right away. You've got to have at least 10 minutes of small talk. Like there are sales books that were published in the previous century that will tell you that. And it's, you know, it's like gospel. You have to do this or else that relationship is going to go nowhere. You're not going to get the sale. I think we're at a different time now. I think people realize that when you do start that, sometimes it can make you seem like a time waster. And you've got to understand that time is so precious. When you're asking for 30 or 40 minutes out of somebody's day, you can't be seen as a time waster. That immediately reinforces those thoughts that that person had in their head when you first sat down, that this person was not worth sitting down with and speaking, about my business challenges too. They clearly don't care. They keep asking me about my weekend for the 9th time. It's like, just get to brass tacks already. They're telling themselves, how can you help me? So one thing that I try to do my best at in terms of building rapport early is being a source of value. You know, nobody wants to meet with somebody who can't help them out. You can be a very personable person. You can have great stories to tell, probably sit down and, have a beer and just be, have a great time. But at the end of the day, whether you're meeting with a business owner or somebody in marketing or somebody in HR or somebody in IT, they've got a lot of responsibilities on their plate and they've got a lot of problems that they're looking to have addressed. And if you're not showing yourself to be to be able to provide value in fixing those problems, that small talk doesn't go very far. It really doesn't. For the little bit you can gain, you're really losing a lot more because you are having that time waster label put on you until you can provide some value. So you have to get into value, show you how you can help them as early as possible. And don't assume anything. Happens a lot. You think you're going to meet with the company ABC who does this. You think this is what's important to them. And you just sort of like open the conversation talking about what you as a company can do to help them solve their problems. Meanwhile, they haven't told you about their problems yet. You're assuming that these are the issues that they face because you may have seen it on LinkedIn or, maybe talk to somebody else, another company in that industry. Ask those questions first. Don't assume anything. So this is my modern approach. Do your research. All right. So like I said, don't assume anything, but still check out their website, do a Google News search of their company, see if there's any headlines, any they're making news, good or bad. If bad, probably want to stay away from that. Check out their social media accounts, see if they're active there, what they're trying to position themselves as. And, some companies do it better than others, and take it for a grain of salt, but at least show up prepared. I think that is a huge part of building that rapport and building that level of trust and respect early on for that foundation is being ready. Cut to the chase. That means 10 minutes. Hey, if it turns out that your kids play on the same soccer team or go to the same school and it turns into an organic conversation that last 10 minutes, hey, that's totally fine. I'm not saying that that can't happen. It's the forced 10 minutes that you're like, okay, what can we talk about now aside from actually getting to the reason why we're here? So cut to the chase. And what that really means is, how can I help you? How can I solve your problems? I'll get to flushing out those problems next. This is really how trust and respect is earned. That trust and respect is the concrete in that foundation of a strong business relationship. By showing that you're there to actually solve a problem and create value and not waste time are two critical ways to gain that trust and respect, which is earned over time. And lastly, like I said, that's not to say that you can't still form a very strong personal relationship. That is, anybody, you have any client that you've been working with over a few years, you get to know them. They've got a cottage in Muskoka, or their daughter is in dance and whatever it is, there's, there are those personal relationships that are formed. And a lot of the time that might not even be, kind of during a call during the day. You can have lunch or dinner or, take them out golfing if your client's into that. There are ways, but I really feel that personal relationship is only really going to flourish if it is built on a foundation of a solid business relationship. Being that source of value is really, in my opinion, the best way to build that rapport early on. Lastly, my meeting agenda. So I'll go over this for a lot of newer sales reps who join our team. They ask what's the best way to run a meeting with somebody who doesn't know us, who's really unfamiliar. So quick pleasantries, cut out sort of 10, 15 minutes of small talk. You're only eating into actual valuable time. Establish your agenda. This one is huge. Just like I did at the beginning of this presentation, outline what you want to cover in that meeting, and most importantly, confirm with that person that they're still good to spend that 30 minutes, that 45 minutes, that hour that you agreed upon. Things can happen between when they accept that email invite for a meeting and when they sit down with you. So make sure that you're still good for that allotted time. Be very brief in your approach. If I'm in a meeting with somebody, Brand Boulevard, we do brand and merch and apparel. If they're a regular buyer, if they have a current supplier that they use, they've got an idea of what a promo distributor does. It's not breaking news. Tell them a little bit what might make us a tiny bit different, but spend as minimal time on this as possible. Reason being is the biggest part of any meeting is digging, asking questions. And not just industry or something specific to what you do. If I'm in a meeting for a prospect, for the first time, and I say, how many hoodies do you order in a year? What's your favorite kind of toque? What's your pen of choice? Those are all far too deep down in conversations that are not appropriate for that time. For you to really create that value, you've got to ask kind of bigger questions. Get a feel for the company. Are you experiencing growth? Do you have growth plans? Is it through acquisition? Is it through organic growth? What's your sales team like? Are they out on the road? Does your marketing team provide leads for your sales? Do they have to go and get them on their own? How many employees do you have? There's so many questions that you can ask. And the reason you're asking these questions is to flush out those pain points. You want to flush out what you can bring to the table that is actually valuable. Now, when I first mentioned it, I said, you want to be a source of value. Value is different for every person in every organization. You can't assume that because your company does this, this, and this, that is going to be appreciated and well received with the prospect that you're talking to. By digging and bringing out those questions, that and only then is a spot that you can be in where you can actually talk about the things that you can help with that actually solve problems. So I like to keep a meeting, and now asking those questions, it takes a little bit of time. Depending on the industry, some people like to focus on specific industries. Just practice, flesh out those questions. It shows that you're willing to learn about what that company has going on, and you're willing to listen. I think, which at the end of the day, most salespeople will agree that the listening is far more important than the speaking part of things. And lastly, is assign yourself homework. Now, what I mean by that, sure, every meeting that you have, if it ended with, hey, that's awesome, I'll get started on this project for you, I'll get some over to you this afternoon. Like if they had an event happening where there was a potential sale there, that's great. It doesn't always happen that way. We understand that, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't still kind of build on that momentum that you had started when you first contacted this person on the phone. You built up a good you got the ball rolling. That snowball is going down the hill. With a meeting, an intro kit, you've got a little bit. You've got the very, very base of that business foundation started. So why just let it fizzle out? So give yourself some homework. Say, what do you look for? What can I do to just send you in a week? And just say, no commitments. Just wanted to get you something. Does a few things. One, shows that you're still looking to, you care. You want to give them something that they have said is valuable to them, and it just gives you a reason to follow up and keep that momentum going. So that's my typical meeting agenda. I think that's it. So before we get into questions, just to kind of reiterate and underline some, my key points is bring structure to your day. Where sales professionals were sometimes just all over the place. Tighten it up, be more sort of concise and disciplined in your approach throughout the day. Look back, track your numbers, see if it is actually working. And lastly, it's all about building that rapport. People do not have time for time wasters. And the sooner you can get ahead of that and prove that you're worthy of their time, you're going to be much further ahead in that, in turning that prospect, into a potential client. So, thank you so much for taking the time. I think we're going to open it up to some questions.
Nathan, thank you so very much for the presentation. It was extraordinary, and you have a lot of enthusiasm that actually makes like a salesperson and me actually wanting to get on the phone or going out and connecting with people. I think you are excellent in actually looking at it and saying that it actually only works when you're able to identify the value to the client, and that might be that you're saving them money with what you're offering them, that you're saving them in some cost. You're saving them time in working with you. I think time has become a critical one, especially as more and more people are introducing technology in other areas of it. And you're going to create and help them actually in creating sales and attracting more consumers and customers that they have, or the loyalty and the retention that they're looking for. When we really keep those essential aspects in mind, when we're framing a conversation that we have with a potential client of ours, I think we're set to win. So I really do appreciate it. And I wanted to also say that the time blocking is one of the things that I think are key in moving forward. I think otherwise each and every time you open up an email, you move down a rabbit hole, and you might never actually in days to follow actually come to the calls that you need to make and the ways that you want to connect with customers. So it's excellent.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. We have quite a few questions that have come forward
Awesome.
directly from the audience I want to get to, but there's a couple also of individuals who weren't able to join us, but they actually texted us ahead of time or emailed us, and they asked some questions. And I think this one is the one that has come forward from a couple of people is that we have gone through significant changes in businesses. The normal way of doing business is maybe not the way we're moving forward. And some of the biggest and most successful companies have really studied and adapted to the current trends that are there. Has COVID created different relationship? Is it easier or harder? What role does it play in today's environment where we might not be able to see people face to face, and we need to connect with them differently? And how do we ensure that we're still as successful moving forward?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think every organization who has a sales team struggled with this for months. We did, being in the brand and merch space, March 2020 hit, we took it on the chin. It was dark days around here when, pretty much every order that anyone placed in the last few months is being canceled because trade shows and events and everything are being canceled. But, and people are just uncertain of what the economical landscape was going to look like. And, they just wanted to kind of, keep that marketing budget, inside. So for me, it forced a few things. One was, okay, let's figure out who's still buying, who's a potential client for us. We had, for the longest time, we had a sizable book of clients who we were servicing very, very well. And a lot of them, 30-40%, they were not going to buy a thing last year. So we said, well, that's not good. Like, you're not going to get water out of a rock. So what we did was, this word has been so overused, and it's a pet peeve of mine, but it suits right now. So I'm going to say we pivoted and we said, okay, what industries are doing well? And we really had a very specific effort to go out and target those companies. Our sales team really had to change their mindset, where, like, in my role, I'm always going out looking for new companies to work with. Our sales team are more in the kind of account management role, where they are working with their current clients. But when 40% of those aren't buying anything, everybody had to be in business development. So that was one thing that we really had to shift was, listen, you can't, we're great account managers, but we've got to get aggressive here. And we've got to get in hunting mode and find, because once the dust settled, sort of summer of 2020, we realized that there was still potential out there. We ended up having a really good Q4 because we did shift and focus on those industries that were still doing well. But to get to the question of how do you still, how do you have meetings? How does this work? It used to be you would never do business with anybody until you met them in person. Obviously, Zoom has been great, and it's had its downfalls. One thing I really like about it is the fact that being based in St. Catharines, getting to Toronto pre-COVID was always a pain. You're 2 hours in the car trying to find parking for 1 or 2 meetings. It wasn't the best use of your day. When I can have a meeting with somebody in Toronto in the morning, and then in the early afternoon, I can meet with somebody from Edmonton, and then from somebody in Vancouver at 4 o'clock. That's brilliant. And it's something that I think isn't going to go away. But it has allowed us to sort of expand beyond kind of what we thought would be our traditional sort of bounds. And last thing I would mention on that too, and a bit of a shameless plug probably, but is getting if you can't be there in person, get something to them in person. If it's a prospect, if it's a client, that's where we really ramped up like I mentioned intro kit a few times. That's something that we really refined over the years, but it's basically a box that we send out. It's got some kind of cool marketing material. It's got some swag, shirt, water bottle, whatever it is. The idea is that you're getting something into somebody's hands in a time where they're not really leaving their house. So that was one thing that we've done a lot of, and we're doing a lot of for our clients whose sales team have the same issues. It's like, we're not doing any trade shows, we're not doing any meetings. How do we still impact our customers? And a big part of that is let's get something to them. And it's not like they have to buy that day. It just keeps you on the radar. So that would kind of be like my 3 big things to that with COVID is, pivot. You got to look for new opportunities. You can't just sort of rest on your laurels. Utilize Zoom. It is good. And then, get things, create out of nowhere, sort of manufacture those in-person experiences that, we can't have right now.
Yeah, actually, I think it's an excellent point, because I think it's a different way to connect with them. We're looking at who are our customers, who were our customers yesterday, who potentially could be our customers tomorrow. Yeah. I think our product mixes, I've heard that from a lot of businesses saying, like, has slightly changed and shifted. Yeah. To in that alignment of it too. And I do like your idea actually of saying, like, can get something tangible into their hands if you can't be there in person. And I think people overall, I think, have been very understanding of that aspect of it. We have Sharon Wilson with us, and her comments and a question I think is a good one. She says that she finds that if there's no outstanding work or meetings, then time blocking seems to be really, you can manage it really well. However, in a world that we're living in with Zoom meetings, which is actually a higher number of meetings that we have, so higher number of follow-up and different follow-up, more intense in some cases, yeah. And of workflow that maybe is overwhelming to some people at the same time, while many of us are still working remotely. What recommendations do you have for those individuals?
Yeah, I think it's, just that Zoom fatigue. We were speaking briefly before we started the presentation. People are just getting that virtual fatigue, and yeah, because there are no breaks. At least if you have a meeting where you have to drive to it, or even if it's just a meeting at in the boardroom in your office, you still have time to get back to your desk, you sort of unwind. But if I've been on so many calls, Zoom calls, where the person I'm meeting with says, yeah, sorry, like I literally have to jump on another Zoom call right now. Like, and you're literally going from one to the next with like a 5-second break, and that it's going to wear on you. I think what is really important is determining, and it's hard to say, it depends on the environment that you work in, but determining if a Zoom meeting is really worth it, right? If there was always those conversations pre-COVID where it was like, okay, we have to have a meeting to talk about the meeting where we're going to meet about this, right? And there was all these unnecessary meetings, and that we were getting better as sort of a work culture to say, you know what, this can be summed up in a quick email. We don't have to sit around and meet about this. And it was going well. And then Zoom brought us all inside, or COVID brought us all inside, where we can have Zoom meetings like instantaneously. Like I'll get a meeting invite. Oh, can you meet in Zoom in 5 minutes? I'm like, well, it'd probably been a bit better to scope that out. So I suppose my answer would be, determine how important that Zoom meeting is. I think we have to get back to that of, is it really worth, going from one Zoom meeting to the next when, you have to understand that other things need to get done in your day. So even if it is, take time blocking for your Zoom meetings. If you've got them scattered throughout the day, try and get them all, banged out in the first couple hours of the day, and then you still can time block for those other activities. But hey, it is tough. It's not an easy thing by any means, in terms of, these are all very important Zoom meetings. There's a lot happening right now in the world with reopening, and, depending on some people's roles, you can't say that we can't have this meeting. It's very, very important. But if you can just try and kind of group them together as much as possible, I think that is, that would be probably my best recommendation there.
No, actually, I think it's a good one. And I think we need to prioritize it and saying, like, these are really the key ones. And maybe we can move some of the other things into, like, if possible, like to another day, or like in a week, where we can say, like, here, I'm going to allocate half a day for exactly those kind of follow-ups. So they have their place. There's some specific questions, and I think they're really good ones that have come in through the chat. And one particular one is where they're asking, and they're curious for your follow-up strategy when contacting new leads or early on in the sales relationship. So the first initial call has been made, the contact has been made, but now they are almost too busy for a follow-up call, which is always interesting to me. And maybe some of the emails get lost. So people are looking at the effort that they've put in. And I'm reminded in your presentation, you gave that formula of 100 outreach, 50 you hear back from, 20 you will be, and then narrow down to really 2 opportunities that come out of it. But how do we transition it? How do we make sure that we don't lose them along the chain? And how do we create that value proposition so that after I talk to you now, that you actually are willing to pick up my call tomorrow? Yeah,
no, it's a really good point. And it is tricky. As difficult as it is to get that first phone call in with the right decision maker, like I said, that following up is the trickiest part. So this is where we utilize a lot of things that are just going out. So I'll make that first initial phone call. If they're the right person, I say, great, I'm going to send you that intro kit. So I have it sent out through our warehouse. I will, in the system, depending on where they are in the country, I'll make sure that I set a follow-up date or a follow-up to call them 1 or 2 days after that kit is supposed to land. That day comes, I call them up. If I can't get a hold of them, I'll try 2 more times. So I give it 3 times. If I can't follow up and get them on the phone after 3 tries, leave them a voicemail saying, hey, sorry I missed you. Just wanted to make sure that kit arrives safe and sound. Very straightforward. Send a follow-up email after that. Now, what you'll find often, and they won't return your call, but they will say, yeah, I got the kit. That was great. Thanks. So clearly this isn't somebody who you would consider a really hot lead, but somebody who did say in that first call, listen, we use a lot of whatever you have to sell. So they are still a very good potential prospect. From there, the easy thing is to do, they're obviously not interested. Maybe I'll just call them up in a few months. By then, all that work that you had done, it fizzled out. There's no fire there anymore. There's no momentum. Schedule something for 2 weeks. Now, what we call it internal value, again, and determining what is valuable to each person is different until you have that conversation. But for us, it's, okay, let's get something into their hands just to remind them that you're still on the radar. That's all you want to be, right? Is on the radar. You want to be somebody that they think of when they go, oh, I need this, or, oh, it's funny you mentioned that. Somebody called me up the other day. So when I say keeping on the radar, it's for us, again, we're in promo, right? So I have easy access to a lot of these items, but I'll go grab a a new insulated coffee koozie, that like a nice new metal one. I'll throw a $10 Starbucks gift card in there and I'll say, hey, winter's time is coming. It's one of my favorite products. Here's a little something for you and something to put in it, a bit of a treat. And I'll just send that out to them and I'll give it a week or two. And generally what you're doing is giving that person a reason to answer your call the next time or get back to you. And you're just staying on their radar. They don't have to be big, extravagant gifts. It just has to be something that keeps that momentum going. Now, sometimes it's just not meant to be. It's not in the cards and, they'll never get back to you, which is a reality of sales. But just because it was sort of a no that day or they're not interested, I've always said it doesn't mean it's going to stay a no. Even if somebody says, we're really happy with our current service provider, that's great. That doesn't necessarily mean that'll be the case 6-12 months down the road. Just stay on their radar. Other ways that will provide value, depending on what you do. But for us, for example, I'll ask for a logo and I'll just do up some virtual mock-ups of, I know if it's a company that they do a lot of cool hats or winter jackets, I'll just have some mock-ups created. It takes little time on our end and, it lands in their inbox and they go, oh, that's cool. Like, at least he's thinking of us. So just stay on their radar. Think about creative different ways. If they said, oh, you know what, like, not a good time right now. My kitchen's getting renoed. It's a mess. Send them a gift certificate for a local restaurant around the corner being dinner's on us tonight. Just little things like that can go so far for when that time comes when they are ready to order or to, engage in business with you. You're there, you're ready, you're waiting in the wings. And if that time never comes, it's pretty clear that they're not a prospect you should be pursuing anyway. If a year or two goes by and they're not ordering or buying anything, they should probably just be disabled in your system and then move on to the next one. Cut bait and move on. But it's really about staying on the radar. For me, I'm relentless that way in the most nice, kindest way possible. I won't claim to be too many things, but I am persistent in that. So yeah, just stay on top of it, stay on the radar, and it can, you just never know what can come up out of it.
Yeah, no, makes perfect sense. And I think persistence does pay off because sometimes we just need to connect with people at the right time when they're ready to make that decision.
Yeah.
And sometimes the timing isn't right. There's a question here in the chat that is asking, how do you prepare your call list each day? What is the process of that?
So I'll spend a few hours each week or every other week loading up a list of suspects. So there's a lot of, we use, what's it called, Scott's directory, but there's a lot of business directories you can use. Even if, oftentimes what I'll do for suspecting, which is what I call just looking at companies who we can potentially do business with, I will go to, here's a good one is, say trade shows come back in, you want to concentrate on the food and beverage industry. Look for the biggest food and beverage industry trade show happening in Canada. Look at all the exhibitors and just start hammering through that list. Some of them might be clients, check them in the system. If not, throw them in as a suspect. Do a little bit of LinkedIn search. For me, upgrading to LinkedIn Premium, where I've got unlimited searches in a company, was like an absolute game changer. So maybe find somebody, depending on what you sell, what your offering is. If you talk to people in HR or marketing or IT, do a quick search. If you can find somebody, don't spend too much time, but if you can find somebody, put their name in there in the company and just keep adding it. So I'll spend a few hours every other week doing that, loading up my hopper full of what I call suspects. From there, it's just about, like I said, organizing them. If there are issues where some of them are out west, you've got to call them at certain times of the day. But for the most part, let's say if they're all in Ontario, you just make, it's just volume. It's activity. Activity breeds results. So if you know that, you've got 70 or 80 or 100, companies in this hopper, that's where it's a situation that quantity is far better than quality at that point, because you're not spending too much time. It's very clear. Like you're doing a bit of sort of early on qualifying. If they're a small company that has like 6 people, generally I'm not going to be giving them a call because that's not the sort of companies that I go after. But if they're a sizable company, or if they tick a lot of the boxes that you look for when prospecting, put them in the system and just load up that hopper. And if you don't get through them on Tuesday, just bump them to Wednesday and just make sure that it's constantly full and keep an eye on it. There's nothing worse than kind of getting in at 9 and being like, oh shoot, like I've got 10 calls for today. Like that's not enough. So just being proactive, and even if it's just getting in a little bit early and just adding 30 or 40 more in is really important. So you have to be prepared. You can't be wasting time during the day, fumbling around trying to figure out who you're going to call next.
Well, this is an interesting question now. I know that much of what you sell is like the B2B probably sales, a lot of it is focused on it. So how many calls does one make? Like how many prospects, how many cold calls would you make? Because the list is, we spend time, we have the list, but I think the results are dependent on what you put in. The quality, but also the quantity to some degree. You have to turn over some of them. It
depends on the industry, for sure. So in promo, any sizable company qualifies for me. And so I'm in a fortunate spot where there's no issues when it comes to the amount of companies that I can call on for new business. I know not all industries are like that. Say, for example, when I sold advertising, I sold it in a publication for accountants. So the type of client that I was going after were people who who wanted to advertise to accountants. So there's like tech companies, there's industry associations, not a very large pool. Like ultimately, I think it was like 150 to 200 total potential clients that I could, bring on board. That's very different than somebody who sells something that pretty much anybody can use, and there's hundreds of thousands of potential clients. So it really does depend on your industry. And for sure, like if I were in advertising sales right now in a niche market, in a trade publication of some sort where I have a limited number of potential clients, for sure, it's totally unrealistic to think you're going to get 70, 80, 100 calls in a day. You're just going to be calling the same people every single day. And that's not the right way to do it either, right? Like people are going to get really, really annoyed and tell you to stop calling if you get in touch with them 3 times a week. So it really does depend on the industry that you're in. And I think if it is a smaller number in that sort of, let's call it that pond of potential clients that you're fishing in, it's even that much more important to do those value projects for them while they're still out there. So do things to get on their radar. And with fewer clients, you have more time to put into those projects, those proactive projects where, if I'm in this advertising sales and there's somebody who I'm really going after, I have the time to say, this is what a targeted marketing campaign can look like for you, between a mix of email marketing, website advertising, and a bit of, sponsored content that our journalists can write for you. So I'm spending a good hour that day on a proactive project, where here I don't really spend that much time on a project because my call hopper is so full and I've got so many calls to make. So I think if it is a situation where you don't have as many calls to make because your overall pool of potential clients is smaller, spend more time on that proactive side of things to just, you want to blow their mind at the end of the day. You want to go, we got to give this group a chance. They continually put neat things in front of us. Let's give them a shot. So that would be one of my solutions to that issue of having a smaller, client pool.
Yeah, no, makes full sense. I'm so conscious of it. Actually, the time is flying by, and I think I could have a conversation with you for like another hour, because questions that people are having when it comes to how to handle objections that people might have, how to overcome that, and how to deal with it. And so I think there's a lot of good learning that is really taking place. I just wanted to thank you very much, actually, for being with us. We really did appreciate it. And my thanks also, as always, go to YMCA for Employment and Immigrant Services for actually being with us and for partnering with us in making this particular webinar possible. Just for everyone here, the webinar has been recorded. Some of you have asked for direct contact information. We will most definitely share that, as well as the information that has been shared here today with you as a follow-up to this Lunch and Learn. Nathan, again, it was a great...
Yes, thank you.
And, it's exciting. And to everyone who's been able to join us today, thank you so very much for being with us. And we hope that you have a chance to join us actually tomorrow. We have another, because this is October, a small business month, and we have a business series that we have planned. So check out gncc.ca for the details, because I think all learning that can take place makes us better during these times and moving forward as well. So thank you.